Ian, there's a woman stuck in the snow, Bailey said, pressing her face to the frosted window of their tiny rental house. Ian Sullivan looked up from the dented kitchen sink where he was rinsing a mug, still wearing the same hoodie from yesterday. What? Where? Bailey pointed with a mittened hand. Across the street, her car's not moving. With a sigh, Ian dried his hands on a towel and grabbed his coat. Stay inside, okay? I'll be right back. The snowstorm had hit hard overnight, turning their already freezing street into a whiteout mess. Ian trudged out past the slush-covered curb, boots crunching through the icy buildup. The car in question was a sleek black SUV, its tires spinning uselessly in place. He knocked on the window, and the woman inside jumped, then rolled it down halfway. "Hey, need help?" he asked, brushing snow off his jacket. She was stunning. Pale pink lips pressed together in frustration, dark hair pulled back in a sharp ponytail. Her expression softened the moment their eyes met. "Yes, please, I've tried everything," she said, her breath fogging the air between them. "I'm supposed to be at a meeting downtown." Ian glanced at the tires. "You won't get far like this. Snow's packed under the wheels." She sighed, clearly annoyed but trying to stay calm. "Perfect, just perfect." "I'll try pushing. Put it in reverse when I say go." She nodded, and he moved to the back. The SUV was spotless unusual for this neighborhood, but he didn't think much of it. Probably someone visiting. "Okay now," he shouted. The tires spun again, but with a grunt, Ian shoved with all his weight. The car lurched backwards several feet. He kept at it until it finally cleared the patch of ice. He jogged back to her window, breathing hard. "You're good now. Just take it slow down the block, there's less buildup." She stared at him, blinking like she hadn't expected him to actually fix it. "That was amazing," she said. "Thank you." "No problem." She reached into her purse and pulled out a 20. "No," Ian said quickly, stepping back. "Keep it." She blinked. "You don't want." "I didn't do it for money," he said. "Just wanted to help." Something shifted in her eyes. He turned before she could say anything else, heading back toward the house. "Wait," she called suddenly. "What's your name?" He paused. "Ian." "I'm Vivienne," she said. He nodded once and disappeared into the storm. Vivienne Sterling sat in her office 2 days later, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Sterling & Co. headquarters. Snow still dusted the rooftops of Chicago below. Her assistant, Marla, was going over her calendar, but Vivienne wasn't listening. Her thoughts kept circling back to the man from the storm. Ian. He hadn't known who she was. No one ever didn't know. Everyone always wanted something, an investment, a favor, a photo for social media. But he'd helped her and walked away like he didn't care about any of that. "Marla," she said suddenly, turning from the window, "can you find out who lives on Glenwood and 13th? Someone helped push my car, and I didn't get to thank him properly." Marla blinked. "Sure, do you remember the house?" Small blue broken porch railing. He had a little girl. Bailey. Marla scribbled fast. "I'll find him." Ian was late picking Bailey up from school. Again. The snow had made his side construction job nearly impossible to get to, and the heating bill had wiped out most of his last paycheck. He pulled up in his rusted truck just as the last of the kids were being ushered into the aftercare room. Bailey came running. "Can we get hot chocolate?" "I'll make it at home," he said, his voice quiet. "Cheaper." She didn't argue. She knew. That night, he tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and sat at the table with a stack of overdue bills. He didn't notice the knock at first. When he opened the door, Vivienne stood there in a tailored black coat, holding a paper bag. Her driver waited behind her in a sleek black car. Ian stared. "Vivienne." "I brought dinner," she said, lifting the bag. Figured you might not have had time to cook. What, why? I told you I wanted to say thank you properly. He hesitated, then stepped aside. It's not much, but come in. She walked in slowly, taking in the peeling paint, the flickering light bulb. Bailey peeked from the hallway. Hi, Vivienne said warmly. Bailey looked at her dad. Is she your friend? Sort of, Ian said, rubbing the back of his neck. Vivienne smiled. I'm Vivienne. I'm Bailey. Vivienne crouched to her level. I like your name and your socks. Bailey beamed. They sat down to eat. The food was from an upscale restaurant Ian couldn't even pronounce. Bailey devoured her pasta, and Ian tried not to feel awkward eating truffle chicken in his own kitchen. You didn't have to do this, Ian said quietly once Bailey had gone back to her room. I wanted to. I'm guessing you're not just Vivienne, he said, watching her. She looked down at her wineglass. Vivienne Sterling, CEO of Sterling & Co. Ian blinked, as in, the tower downtown. She nodded. You're a billionaire. Technically, she said, eyes meeting his. He leaned back, and you're here in my house. Because you pushed my car without asking for anything, and you didn't even know who I was. They sat in silence for a moment before she added, That doesn't happen to me anymore. Ian shook his head, smiling a little. You're a strange woman. She laughed softly. You're a good man. He glanced down at the table. I'm just trying to be a decent dad. Well, she said, taking another sip of wine, you're doing that very well. That night, after she left, Ian stood at the window and watched her car disappear into the snow. He should have told her not to come back, that her world and his didn't mix. But he didn't. Because for the first time in a long time, something about her made him feel like he could breathe again. And he wasn't ready to let that go. A week later, Ian found himself standing in front of a glass revolving door so pristine it looked like it belonged on another planet. He'd gotten the address from a thick envelope Vivienne had left in his mailbox. No note, just a formal invitation to Sterling & Co. Annual Winter Gala. And a sleek black suit, tailored his size. He hadn't wanted to go, but Bailey had begged him to. She likes you, she'd whispered, tugging on his sleeve. Even I can tell. Now here he was, feeling like an intruder in someone else's skin. Inside, chandeliers glittered like constellations across the ballroom ceiling. Waiters in white jackets floated past with silver trays. A jazz quartet played near the polished grand piano. Everyone shimmered in satin and diamonds, sipping champagne and laughing like they'd never worried about rent. Ian adjusted the cuffs of the jacket. He hadn't worn a suit since his cousin's wedding, and that one had fit like cardboard. He moved through the crowd, eyes scanning for Vivienne, unsure if he'd made a mistake. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come. He turned. Vivienne stood at the edge of the room, wearing a midnight blue gown that hugged her like it had been sewn onto her skin. Her hair was swept back, neck bare except for a thin silver chain. She looked nothing like the woman in the snowstorm, but her voice was the same. Calm, direct, warm. I almost didn't, Ian admitted. Wasn't sure I'd make the guest list. You didn't, she said, lips curving. Put you on it myself. He raised an eyebrow. Figured. You clean up well, she said. And you look like you on the stars. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Come with me. They slipped through a side hallway into a quieter lounge, the music fading behind them. A fire crackled in the marble hearth. They stood in the glow, the buzz of the gala distant now. I wanted you to see this part of my life, she said, watching the flames. Why? Ian asked, hands in his pockets. Because I know what you think, she said. That this world isn't for you, that I'm not for you. He didn't answer right away. I get it, Ian, she continued. I used to think that too, that love only happened between people who lived in the same world, but I look at you and I don't see lines. I see someone who makes me feel grounded. Real. He exhaled slowly. It's not about being real. It's about waking up wondering how you'll stretch $23 until Friday. It's about your kid needing a coat and you pretending you didn't want dinner anyway. Her expression softened. I didn't come here to fix you. I came because I care. He hesitated. I don't know what to do with that. Maybe you don't have to do anything yet, she said, stepping closer. The air between them tightened. She reached up and adjusted his collar, fingers brushing his throat. I have a meeting in Berlin next week, she said quietly. I'll be gone 5 days. Ian swallowed. And you wanted me here tonight because? I wanted you to know, she said, that I'm not going to disappear. He searched her eyes. Why me? Because when you looked at me, you weren't impressed. You weren't intimidated, you just saw me. He looked away. I'm still not sure that's enough. She nodded. Then I'll prove it's more. Back in the ballroom, they didn't dance. They stood near the bar and talked about books, about Bailey, about the time Vivienne accidentally set off the fire alarm in a 5-star hotel because she didn't know how to use the sauna. He laughed genuinely. When he left, she walked him to the door herself. I'll call when I land, she said. Okay. He turned to go, then stopped. Thank you for the suit. You can keep it, she said. He gave a nod and walked into the night. The next morning, Bailey was already dressed when he stepped into the kitchen. Did she kiss you? She asked around a mouthful of cereal. Ian blinked. What? Vivienne, did she kiss you? No. Bailey shrugged. She will. He poured himself coffee. What makes you so sure? Because she didn't look at you like the other moms look at their boyfriends. She looked like she wanted to stay. Ian stared at his daughter. She's not like the other moms, he said finally. Bailey grinned. I know. That afternoon, a delivery truck pulled up outside their house. Ian opened the door to find a man holding a white garment bag and a rectangular box tied with gold ribbon. I have a delivery for Bailey Sullivan, he said. Ian frowned. That's my daughter. The man handed over the bag first. Inside was a red wool coat with a soft fur-lined hood. The tag was still on it. Ian didn't want to look at the price, but he did anyway. It was more than his last paycheck. He opened the box next. Inside was a card, written in elegant script. Every kid deserves to be warm, V. Bailey squealed when she saw it. Can I wear it to school? Yeah, Ian said slowly, still staring at the box. You can. That night, as he tucked her into bed, she looked up at him. She's not going to go away, Bailey whispered. You shouldn't let her. Ian sat beside her, brushing her hair back from her forehead. I'm just trying to make sure I don't mess it up, he said. Bailey yawned. Maybe she's trying not to mess it up too. He stayed there a while, listening to her breathe. Outside, the snow had started to fall again, but this time, it didn't feel like a storm. Ian leaned against the window frame, watching the soft white flakes fall beneath the amber glow of the street lamp. Bailey was asleep, curled beneath her blanket, the red coat neatly folded at the foot of her bed. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. Vivienne hadn't called. He wasn't surprised Berlin was 6 hours ahead, and she'd said she'd be buried in meetings. Still, he hadn't realized how much he'd gotten used to her presence, her voice cutting through the noise of his day like a warm thread pulling him forward. He turned from the window and sat at the table. The power bill was due in 2 days. His last job had been canceled because of the snow, and the next one was still uncertain. He rubbed the back of his neck and stared at the numbers. They didn't change, no matter how long he looked. The knock came just after midnight. He opened the door, expecting maybe his neighbor or someone looking for help with a busted pipe. Instead, a woman in a navy coat stood there, her hair windblown, cheeks pink from the cold. "Vivienne." "I thought you were in Berlin," he said, blinking. "I was," she said, brushing snow from her shoulder. "I landed a few hours ago." He stepped aside without a word. She moved past him, her boots leaving wet prints on the wood floor. "I couldn't sleep," she said, unbuttoning her coat. "The whole time I was gone, I kept thinking about this place. About you, about Bailey." "You didn't have to come here tonight," he said, shutting the door behind her. "I know," she said, facing him, "but I didn't want to wait." He studied her. Her eyes were tired, but there was something burning beneath them, urgent, restless. "I didn't call because I didn't want to promise something and break it," she said, "but couldn't stay away." He nodded slowly. "You look exhausted." "I am," she said, "but that doesn't matter right now." He walked toward the kitchen, pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet. "You want coffee?" "No," she replied. "I want to talk." He hesitated, then poured hot water over a tea bag instead. She sat at the table, fingers laced, watching him. "I grew up in a house where everything had a price," she said. "Love, approval, even silence. My father only gave affection when it served him. My mother stayed quiet to keep the peace." Ian sat across from her, waiting. "When I took over Sterling & Co., I swore I'd never let anyone control my life like that again. I've built everything, have with blood and hours and sacrifice." "You don't have to explain yourself to me," he said. "Yes, do," she said firmly. "Because I need you to understand that I've never let anyone close unless I could control the outcome. Until you." He looked at her quiet. "I can't control you," she said. "And I don't want to. You don't need anything from me. You don't pretend. You don't twist yourself into something more appealing. You just are." "And that scares you?" he asked. "It terrifies me," she said, almost laughing. "But it also makes me feel like I can breathe." He leaned back in the chair, folding his arms. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try this. For real, not halfway, not in stolen moments or fancy galas. I want to be part of your life, not just visit it." He rubbed his jaw, thinking. "Bailey doesn't need more confusion," he said. "She's already had enough of that." "I'm not interested in being temporary," she said. "I don't want to be a story you tell her about one day. I want to be part of her life too." He looked at her, long and hard. "Then you show up," he said. "When it's inconvenient, when it's not glamorous, when the pipes burst and the lights flicker and Bailey throws a tantrum over broccoli." "I will," she said. "I'm not impressed by money," he added. "But I'm not intimidated by it either. You don't have to hide who you are around me, but don't ever try to buy your way into this house." She leaned forward. "I'm not here to buy anything. I'm here because I want to stay." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of all the things they hadn't known how to say until now. "I should sleep," she said finally, her voice softer. "I didn't plan to drop in like this." "You want the couch?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "That depends. Is it more or less comfortable than Berlin?" He chuckled. "Depends who you ask." She curled up in the corner of the couch while he grabbed a blanket from the hall closet. Her eyes were already closing when he draped it over her. He paused, watching her settle in the CEO in designer heels, now barefoot, and curled into a couch that had seen better days. He didn't say anything, just turned off the lamp and let the quiet settle around them. The next morning, Bailey padded into the living room in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Vivienne, she whispered, staring at the woman still asleep under the blanket. Ian crouched beside her. She came back. Bailey blinked. Is she staying? Ian looked at his daughter, then at the woman breathing quietly on their couch. For now, he said, yeah, she is. Bailey grinned and tiptoed toward the kitchen. Later that afternoon, Vivienne stood in the backyard with Ian, watching Bailey throw snowballs at a tree like it had done something personal. I don't know how to do this, she said, but I want to learn. He glanced over. You don't have to know everything. She exhaled. That's a first. He reached down and picked up a handful of snow. Lesson 1, he said, packing it into a ball. We don't take ourselves too seriously around here. She narrowed her eyes. Are you about to? Before she could finish, the snowball hit her squarely on the shoulder. She gasped. Bailey cackled. Vivienne bent down slowly, scooped up her own ammunition, and launched it straight at both of them. By the time the snow war ended, they were all breathless and soaked, cheeks flushed from laughter and cold. Back inside, as they peeled off wet layers, Ian handed her a towel. You're not half bad at this, he said. I've had worse board meetings, she replied. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of damp hair from her forehead. Stay for dinner, he said. It's not truffle anything, just soup. Sounds perfect, she said. And when she smiled this time, it reached all the way to her eyes. Vivienne stood in front of the mirror in Ian's bathroom, her hair damp from the quick shower, wrapped in one of his old flannel shirts, the sleeves rolled to her elbows. It smelled faintly of pine and something warm, something familiar. She'd woken earlier than the others and found herself wandering through a home that didn't hide its imperfections. The floorboards creaked. The faucet dripped. And yet, it was the first place in years she'd felt still. She stepped into the kitchen to find Ian at the stove, humming under his breath as he scrambled eggs. Bailey sat at the table, legs swinging, scribbling something on a piece of paper. You're up early, Ian said as he glanced back. I couldn't sleep, Vivienne replied. Your couch is charming but unforgiving. Should have told me. I'd have swapped, he said, flipping a piece of toast. I'm not made of porcelain, she said, leaning on the counter, though my assistant would disagree. Bailey looked up. I'm making a list for you. Vivienne tilted her head. A list. Bailey held it up. Things you should know, like don't touch the thermostat unless you want Dad to panic. And if you hear the radiator bang, it's not a ghost. Also, I don't eat mushrooms. Vivienne smiled, duly noted. Ian set plates on the table, sliding into the chair beside Bailey. Eat before it gets cold. As they ate, Vivienne reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a slim black envelope. She placed it beside Ian's plate. He frowned. What's this? An opportunity, she said. Had a conversation in Berlin with a colleague who owns a residential development company. They're expanding in Milwaukee, contracting out to smaller crews. They need a reliable foreman to oversee the local sites. Ian stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. You gave them my name, he asked. I gave them your work, she said. Photos of the porch you rebuilt last spring, the shed you salvaged from nothing. He was impressed. He picked up the envelope and opened it slowly. Inside was a letterhead, a name he didn't recognize, and a handwritten note offering a meeting next week. I didn't ask for this, he said. I know, she replied. That's why it means something. Bailey looked between them. Is that good? I don't know yet, Ian said honestly, but it might be. Vivienne pushed her plate aside. I'm not trying to push you into anything. Just thought you deserved to know that someone outside this street sees what you're capable of. He was quiet for a long moment, then folded the paper and slid it back into the envelope. I'll call him. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Later that day, Ian dropped Bailey off at school. When he returned, Vivienne was sitting on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket, sipping coffee from one of his chipped mugs. "You sure you don't have a jet to catch?" he asked as he stepped outside. She looked up, canceled everything through the weekend. "You canceled your schedule." "I thought I'd try living without one, just for a few days." He leaned against the porch railing. "You're not going to like how slow this life moves." "I think I might," she said. He crossed his arms. "What happens when you don't?" Vivienne set the mug down on the railing. "Then, figure it out, and we talk like adults, and I don't vanish into a boardroom without saying a word." He nodded once. She stood and walked toward him. "I'm not expecting permanence overnight, but I'm not walking away either." He met her halfway. "I don't believe in fairy tales." "I don't either," she said, "but I believe in choosing people who make you better." Ian hesitated, then stepped forward and kissed her. It wasn't the kind of kiss that demanded anything. It was quiet and steady, the kind that said, "I see you," the kind that said, "I'm here." When they pulled apart, she didn't say anything. She just rested her forehead against his. That evening, Bailey came home to find the two of them in the backyard again, fixing the side fence. Vivienne held a hammer like it might bite her, but she was laughing as Ian teased her about nearly hitting her own thumb. Bailey watched them from the window, then picked up her notebook and wrote something new on the list. Vivienne found it later, tucked under her coffee mug. Rule number 7, you can stay as long as you want. The next few weeks moved fast. Ian took the meeting in Milwaukee and agreed to a trial project. The pay was better. The hours were stable. He came home tired but with a different weight in his chest, the good kind. Vivienne split her time between her downtown condo and Ian's house, but she was there more often than not. She learned to cook scrambled eggs without burning them. She helped Bailey with her science project and started leaving her phone in another room during dinner. One night after Bailey had gone to bed, Ian sat beside Vivienne on the porch swing, their hands intertwined. "You ever think you'd end up here?" he asked. "Not even close," she said, resting her head on his shoulder. "But you're happy." "I'm more than happy," she said. "I'm home." He kissed the top of her head. A few days later, Ian opened the front door to find a small package on the steps. Inside was a polished wooden sign carved with elegant script. "Home is where the unexpected finds you." No return address, no card. He hung it above the front door. The final snowfall came in late March. It wasn't heavy, just enough to dust the yard in white. Vivienne stood by the window, watching it fall, then turned to Ian and Bailey as they decorated cupcakes at the table. "Next year," she said, "let's spend the first snowfall somewhere warmer." Ian raised an eyebrow. "You offering a vacation?" "I'm offering a private villa in Santorini," she said. Bailey's eyes went wide. "Do they have cupcakes there?" "We'll bring our own," Vivienne replied. Ian leaned back and smiled. "Yes, I think we could do that." And for once, he didn't feel like he was borrowing time from a better life. This was the better life. The woman he'd met in a snowstorm, the one whose tires he'd pushed free, without knowing a single thing about her, was now sitting in his kitchen, barefoot, laughing with his daughter. And she wasn't going anywhere. The first wedding invitation arrived on a Friday. It sat atop the mail pile in Ian's kitchen, nestled between a coupon book and a water bill, wrapped in cream linen paper and sealed with gold wax. He opened it slowly, revealing elegant calligraphy that read, "Vivienne Sterling and Ian Sullivan. Request the honor of your presence at the celebration of their marriage." Bailey had insisted on mailing the first one to themselves. "So it feels real," she'd said, practically bursting with excitement. Now, as Ian stared at the invitation, he realized it did feel real. More than real, it felt inevitable. Vivienne walked in from the backyard, brushing dried lavender from her hands. Did it come? He handed it to her, first one. She smiled and set it beside the vase of wildflowers Bailey had picked that morning. I booked the venue, she said. That garden in Lake Forest, the one with the ivy-covered archway and the stone courtyard. I thought you said it was booked solid. It was. She set the vase straight. Until the owner found out your daughter recited an entire poem about dandelions during the visit. She offered us June. Ian gave a soft laugh. Bailey charming her way through wedding logistics, that tracks. Vivienne leaned against the counter, her eyes settling on him. You sure you're ready for this? Getting married, he folded his arms, amused. To you. She tilted her head. To all of it, me, the press, the cameras, the people who'll call you Mr. Sterling for the rest of your life. He stepped forward, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I don't care what they call me. Care that I get to wake up next to you. She nodded, but there was something else in her gaze. Something she hadn't said yet. What is it? She hesitated. I've been thinking about stepping back. He blinked. From the company. Not entirely, she clarified, but I want to hand off more, delegate, maybe take on a board role instead of day to day. Vivienne, Sterling & Co. is your legacy. She met his eyes. I've spent years building an empire. Now I want to build a life with you, with Bailey. I missed enough already, don't want to miss more. He didn't know what to say for a moment. Then he pulled her close, his hands resting on her waist. Whatever we build, he said, we build it together. Over the next few weeks, everything unfolded in a blur of fabric swatches, seating charts, and cake tastings. Vivienne found a dress that made her eyes sparkle without a single designer label stitched into it. Ian wore the same suit she'd had tailored for him that snowy night. Bailey picked the music for the reception and insisted on wearing gold sneakers under her flower girl dress. The wedding was small, just 60 people, and held in the ivy-wrapped garden beneath a sky so blue it looked painted. Vivienne walked down the stone path with bare feet and a bouquet of wildflowers. When she reached Ian, she whispered, "Don't blink. I want you to remember every second." I couldn't even if I tried, he said, his voice catching. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises not of perfection but of presence, of choosing each other even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. Bailey stood between them when they said, "I do," holding both their hands. The officiant smiled and said, "By the power vested in me, and by the strength of the love standing here before us, I pronounce you husband and wife and family." The cheers that followed were loud and full of laughter. Confetti flew. Bailey shouted, "Finally!" and tossed petals from the basket she'd stubbornly carried all day. The reception was held beneath a canopy of fairy lights. Ian danced with Vivienne to a song he didn't recognize but knew he'd never forget. When it ended, she whispered, "This is the best moment of my life." He leaned close, so far. Over dessert, she stood and tapped her glass gently. "I have a small surprise," she said. "I bought a house." Ian nearly dropped his fork. "You what?" She laughed, "Not just any house. Ours, this one." He blinked, "Our house." "I bought it from the landlord. Renovated the insulation, fixed the pipes, replaced the roof. But I left the creaky stairs and the uneven porch because I know you like them." He stared at her, overwhelmed. "Why?" "Because it's where this began, and I want it to be where everything continues." Bailey jumped up. "Does this mean I get to keep my room?" Vivienne laughed. "It means you get to decorate it however you want." That night, as the guests drifted home and the music faded into a quiet hum, Ian carried Vivienne through the threshold of their now official home. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the couch, pulling him down beside her. "I love you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He kissed her shoulder, her collarbone, her cheek. "I love you more." "Nope," she murmured. "Impossible." In the months that followed, life didn't slow down, but it deepened. Vivienne kept her promise, stepping away from daily operations and investing her time in community projects. She started a local mentorship program for young women in business, and once a week, she and Bailey hosted a backyard book club for the neighborhood kids. Ian's construction work flourished. The Milwaukee developer offered him a permanent partnership, and the project portfolio grew. He turned down a few high-paying bids that would have pulled him away from home too long. "I'd rather be here," he told Vivienne one night as they painted Bailey's new bookshelf together. They celebrated every little thing: the first tomato from the garden, Bailey's solo in the school play, the night they finally fixed the hallway light without it shorting the fuse. There were hard days, of course, late meetings, scraped knees, forgotten lunches, but they faced them the same way they had faced that snowstorm, together. One summer evening, they sat on the porch swing, watching Bailey chase fireflies in the yard. Vivienne leaned into Ian's side. "Do you ever think about how different this could have been if you hadn't come outside that night?" He looked down at her. "If I hadn't pushed your car?" She nodded. "I would have found you eventually," he said, "one way or another." She smiled, resting her head on his chest. "I like our way." He kissed the top of her head, watching Bailey dance barefoot across the grass, her laughter echoing through the twilight. And in that moment, with the scent of lavender in the air and the warmth of Vivienne beside him, Ian knew this wasn't just the life he'd never expected. It was everything he'd ever needed.